Thank you everyone for joining tonight. We are just going to take a few moments to allow participants to join out of the waiting room. Please stand by for the Congressman's Town Hall. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for taking time to participate in Congressman Garamendi's Town Hall tonight. Due to incredible engagement tonight, I ask that everyone keep their questions under 1 minute. That way we can answer as many questions as possible. If you want to ask a question for the Congressman, please type it in the Q&A box. Once again, to ask a question, just simply type your question in the Q&A box. Please ensure your name is listed on your Zoom account so we can call on you. If we can answer your question, I will introduce your name and you will receive a prompt to unmute your mic. Please follow that prompt because we cannot do that for you. We will try to answer as many questions as possible, but if we are not able to address your question, you can go to the Congressman's website, which is garamendi.house.gov/contact, and submit it there for a response. If this and many other links are already in the chat, so you can follow that, and I highly recommend to look at that. And I'm going to skip straight ahead so we can get into the meat of it. But the Congressman's social media accounts are in there, as well as how to get a hold of our staff if you have an issue with a federal agency. We know that there is a huge uptick in issues that folks are having with the government shutdown and Trump's immigration crackdown. So please feel free to go into the chat and see how we can assist you. But without further ado, I'd like to welcome Congressman John Garamendi for some short opening remarks.
Bradley, thank you very much. For those of you that are interested, Bradley's my chief of staff in Washington. Debbie Gibbs, my deputy chief of staff here in California. And the team is located both in Richmond as well as Fairfield and Vacaville. So reach out to us, follow the instructions that Bradley just gave you, and then our website. Well, we do live in very interesting times. Actually, these are very, very dangerous times. Very dangerous for people that want and need health care insurance. Very dangerous for anybody of color that might be out on the street, particularly if you're from Latin America or from Africa. The chances of you getting picked up by the ICE agencies are ever increasing. And we have a president that is determined to put the military in charge of the cities of America. We're headed down an extraordinarily dangerous path. Probably the way this is going, we're headed over the waterfall here. And I'm not sure what's at the bottom, but if it continues the way it is, it's going to be a very, very different America. So for all of you out there that are watching what's happening, if your concerns, we're going to cover as much as we possibly can tonight. Just know this, I have been around for a long time, 5 decades, and I have never, ever in the Nixon period, Reagan period, all of the Republican administrations, as well as the Democratic administration, never, ever heard, saw, or watched the American system endure such an assault as Trump and his acolytes are putting upon all of us. So with that, let's cover a lot of turf tonight. You've got the questions. Maybe I have the answers. Hope so. If not, we'll follow up. Bradley, let's go to work.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. And a quick reminder to folks, I know a couple people dropped questions in the chat. If you can put them in the Q&A section, that is most helpful to keep us organized. We expect a large volume of questions tonight. First, we're going to go to Tony Ubaldi and then followed by Noel Kasky. Tony, you should be getting a prompt to unmute your mic and ask your question.
Congressman, good evening, sir. When when the Democrats get back their power, how long would it take for the Democrats to eradicate the drastic changes that Trump has accomplished?
Well, that is on my mind every time I wake up in the morning and see what Trump tweeted at 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, how in the world, first, can we stop it? If we can take back the House, we can stop some of the things that Trump is doing, not all of them. But we do have the power of the purse, and we will have the opportunity to regain that power and then go after the inappropriate moving of money from one program to another. I should say the illegal moving of money from one account to another account. We can do that if we take back the House. We can certainly hold hearings. We can hold various members of the Trump administration accountable. And so we'll have significant oversight power as well as the power of the purse. Your question goes beyond that, however, and that's how do we restore the very serious cuts, programs that have been totally destroyed or no longer exist. For example, USAID, can we restore those? Probably not. With the help of the courts, some of them, yes, but many of them, no. That will take the Senate and quite probably either override of a veto or a new president. So we're looking at a period of time out ahead of us that's going to be very, very difficult for programs that you and I and millions of people in America and around the world have depended upon.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Noel. Noel, you should be having a prompt. Please feel free to unmute.
Hello, and I really appreciate your doing these meetings. I would like to know what your thoughts are about Proposition 50.
Yes, I'll go into this very, very quickly because I don't want to get into the political campaigning side of it. Proposition 50 is really a response to what President Trump is doing and has done. In Texas, he pushed the Texas legislature, working with individual members of that legislature to get them to vote for a redistricting program that sets up the loss of 5 Democratic seats and the probable 5 Republicans taking those seats. That is a very serious problem if we have to take back the House to control Trump, as I just discussed. Therefore, California decided that we needed to fight fire with fire. We couldn't just stand back. And the legislature and the governor decided that it was time to fight and put forth Proposition 50, which rearranges temporarily rearranges the congressional districts in California, creating 5 competitive districts in California. No guarantee the Democrats would win, but they are competitive, and we have a shot at winning those seats. So we're going to go all out on Proposition 50. The first question is really the dominant question here. Can we take back the House? Can we control Trump? If we take back the House, the answer is we can certainly slow him down and stop many of the excesses that are already in play. Now, he'd have 2 years beyond the next election to do that, but a successful Proposition 50 would tend to cause him to think maybe he ought to be a little more careful. So yes, it's a very, very important thing. I urge support for Proposition 50. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, sir. And next we have Owen Martin. After Owen Martin, we're going to have Elise Lennox. Owen, you should be live.
Thank you. I basically believe that the Prop 50 should be approved by the voters, because if we do approve it, then the possibility of control in the House will be better than the. But is it possible to have Congress say that no state can change their redistricting this term?
Thank you for ending with redistricting. I neglected to add in the previous question, I did say it was temporary for the 2030 decennial. the process that California has used with an independent redistricting commission would be in place. This is a temporary, one-time issue. There's a whole series of very, very important questions about how we conduct ourselves as Democrats, how we push back with what's going to be the next 13 months, because the redistricting, actually it's 15 months before the new districts would be in place. So we've got a lot of work out ahead of us. And I really urge all of the people that are on this call that are concerned, I urge you to engage first in Prop 50, and then in what you have done repeatedly in the run-up to this moment. And that is, take your signs, stand on street corners, and protest. Those all add up. And understand there's a No King's Day coming up in 2 weeks, not this weekend, but the following weekend. And what do we have, 5 million or so in the last No King's Day? Participate and do it peacefully. Do not give Trump and his crazies any opportunity to use some sort of violence at these demonstrations. Just back off. It's not worth it. Back off, back down, and we got to behave ourselves. So we've got individual work that we need to do. If you are of the mind to protest, if you are of a mind to express yourself, and importantly, set the stage for reining in Trump.
Thank you, sir. And just a quick reminder to folks, because we had some new people enter. If you'd like to ask a question, just put that question right in the Q&A box. If we're able to get to your question, you will get a prompt to unmute yourself and ask a question live to the congressman. On deck, we have Janice Colomb, but first we're going to Elise Lennox. Elise, you should have that unmute button. Elise, are you able to unmute? If not, team, can we get Janice queued up?
Hi, this is Janice Coulomb. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Speak loudly and it'll help all of us.
Okay. My husband and I were wondering, since Representative Johnson has dismissed the House for 2 or 3 weeks or wherever, is there anything you can do by getting back early and maybe work on health care or something like that instead of negotiating to get the government back running? Can you work on some of the stuff? Everybody is getting impacted with health care so much. Thank you.
Let's take up the negotiations, and then is there anything that I and others can do? With regard to the negotiations, Senator Thune said something that's very, very important, and I think many of my colleagues have finally noticed it. He said, well, let's just pass this continuing resolutions, and then we will negotiate. We will negotiate on the insurance policy issues. And I do want to talk about that, but I'll take that later. And I'm going, wait a minute. That's a 7-week period of time, and we're going to come right down to the very same place we are 7 weeks from now. So let's negotiate now. If you want to negotiate later, then let's negotiate at this moment. It's actually very, very simple. Take about a paragraph. It's the restoration of the tax credits. I call them subsidies for the Affordable Care Act insurance policies in California. And I'll come back to deal with this in great detail. So I think there's a very real opportunity if we hold tight today, tomorrow, and maybe for a couple more days, that the Senate will say, okay, let's negotiate it. And that won't take more than several hours because it's a very simple thing. And I would urge my colleagues, don't get greedy. Just restore the previous law and whatever changes are necessary to have it continue. Sometimes we get a little carried away and we want to change this or that or something else, and that leads to complex negotiations. Anyway, that's with regard to the restoration of the negotiation policies that are possible. So my advice to the senators, and this has been given in various ways, hold tight. Let's see where we are. We understand there's a world of hurt out there, and we don't want that. We don't like it, but there's 22 million people that are on the Affordable Care Act, and there are several tens of millions more whose insurance policies, including Medicare, will be adversely affected by this entire healthcare crisis. Now back to the first part of your question, which I've totally forgotten by now. Bradley, give me a hand here. What was the first part of that question? Well, why don't you repeat it for me if you're still on? Oh, I think it was, so what can I do personally? Well, do what I'm doing, encouraging you and others around the nation to engage in the protest. And over the last 6 days, I've done 8 different video news pieces across the nation. 4 of those were national. The other 4 were local, Sacramento and the Bay Area, all of them explaining what is going on and urging people to engage in this process. I'll continue to do that. My staff is busy, very, very busy. As Bradley pointed out at the outset, very busy dealing with the problems that existed prior to the shutdown and now the problems of the shutdown. I may cover some of the shutdown problems a little later if a question is asked. Bradley, if there's a question about the health insurance, we should make sure that that's coming up sooner or later. Next question.
Absolutely, sir. So next we have Kathleen Hertia, and then followed by Anjanette Brooks. Kathleen, you should be getting that prompt. Please unmute and ask your question. Kathleen, are you there? We can't hear you. All right, I think we're having some technical difficulties with her. Let's go to Miss Brooks next.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for taking my question. Actually, it's a comment. We're dealing with criminals, and they're not playing fair at all. They don't even follow rules. I don't even think they know there are rules. They've been lying all week. And so my question is, how do California, can we stop our federal dollars of our federal taxes? Because they're not representing the state. He even stopped the funding of the state. And so where's the money going?
Well, you've asked 2 profoundly important questions. Let's deal with don't pay your taxes. A very, very bad idea. I know none of us want to pay taxes, and none of us want to pay taxes that the Trump administration is going to go around the normal appropriation process and do whatever they want to do with your tax money. But the bottom line of it is pay your taxes. The downside of that is something you and I and anybody else do not want to have to endure. With regard to what we can do, let's understand, first of all, California is a net contributor to most other states, certainly to the red states. The red states are net takers of your tax dollars. They pay less than they receive from the red government, and that includes Texas, which does not have an income tax, by the way. So they rely heavily upon the federal government for every storm that comes through, from every tornado and flood. They simply ding the federal government for billions upon billions. Other states do the same. There's information available. You can dig it out on various websites, including ours. But the fact of the matter is, California tax money is used to finance every part of the federal government, from the military to the IRS and on, social service, social welfare programs, Medicaid, and the like. So we want to make sure, we Californians think we have a big voice here. And we're using that voice to push back on the details of the appropriation into the weeds to make sure that California in the appropriation process and in the authorization process. For example, the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, on which I'm a senior member. We work very, very diligently, my staff and I and other Californians on that committee, to make sure that the law is written in such a way that California has a good, and in some cases, an advantageous shot at the money. Unfortunately, the Appropriation Committee does have the power to not pay attention to the underlying law that we may have written. And so this is an ongoing challenge that Californians have. We do have a very significant, the largest delegation, but unfortunately, the Republicans never really help us on the broad issues of bringing the money back to California, both in the appropriation, and we have a consistent fight in the authorizing committees, including the Armed Services Committee. And so our work is to protect California, to bring that money back home, to bring more of our tax dollars back home, to deal with the problems and the challenges that the largest population state in this nation, 40 million, nearly two-thirds, a third larger, almost 40% larger than Texas. And so, which is the next one. So we work diligently at it, and it's North and South working together. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, sir. We're going to try Kathleen one more time. And if Kathleen's not able to get her question out, Bruce Gunther is going to be next. Once again, Bruce Gunther. Kathleen, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me this time?
We can.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about last time. I am greatly concerned about the authoritarian takeovers of the cities. I'm extremely worried about National Guard from Texas, California, etc., being sent to Portland. The judge says no. She has a special meeting, says no again. What's going to happen when they ignore the judges?
This is a profound question and a profound problem. The 2-century-old law, the Posse Comitatus law dating back to the 1800s, prohibited the military from acting as a police force in our communities and in our states. The founders of this democracy understood what the military could and did do in the revolution. Those are the redcoats. And they said, no way, no how. Only if there is an insurrection, for example, the Civil War, or there's an invasion, for example, I don't know, the battles of 1812, the War of 1812. Absent that, there is no legal authority for the military to be deployed in our communities. Now, we've had the military, we certainly had we've had the National Guard. Let me be clear. We've had the National Guard deployed in California with the riots that we saw in the 80s and again in the 90s. So that's appropriate. And that's the California National Guard working under the power of the governor. Now, we need to really be very, very clear and very strong on this issue because this is how Emperor Trump intends to control every state, and particularly control the blue states, which is where most of the pushback against his policies, against his flaunting of the Constitution and the laws is coming from. And so he wants to deploy the military to control the streets, to control the media, and to control the state government and the police. Now, already, the Republicans created the largest domestic federal police force in the history of this nation. And it was $170 billion allocated to Homeland Security for ICE and for CBP, the Customs and Border Patrol, and for every other piece of that. That was whoa, $170 billion. And so ICE is out in the street, Customs and Border Patrol out in the street, decked out in their military equipment, and routinely grabbing people off the street, most of whom are persons of color, women, children, men of color, most of them from our Latino community, however, Black community and others also, particularly if you happen to be a Muslim. So all of this is taking place, and this is an extraordinarily dangerous path that all of us who care about our democracy have to push back on. So the No King's Day, get involved peacefully involved. It's for me and for my colleagues in Congress every day. Every day we're looking to different ways of pushing back, and we are. And we're going after Trump and his minions, Steve Miller, and now Steve Miller, and Vote. These are some of the worst people I have ever seen in government. They are clearly coming from the fascist mentality. So anyway, we got to fight this out, and I encourage you to do so. Make phone calls into the red states. Make phone calls into the red states to your relatives, to your friends, and say, have you contacted the Republican members of Congress and the senators in your state? Yes? Good. Keep doing it. No? Well, you should do it. Next question.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Bruce Gunther, followed by Nancy Anderson. Bruce, you should be getting that unmute. And Bruce, you just remuted.
Hi, Congressman Garamendi. I appreciate what you do for us. I'm a federal employee, and I know this is the million-dollar question. Do we know how long the government shutdown is going to last?
Yes, and if I might take your status as a federal employee to talk about the challenges and some of the opportunities that may exist for you and other federal employees. The shutdown will last if one of two things happen. First and best, if the Republicans decide to negotiate now rather than after the passage of a 7-week continuing resolution, we could end this shutdown tonight, tomorrow. As I said earlier, about one paragraph in the continuing resolution will suffice. Now, keep in mind, this deals with the insurance premiums, does not deal with the Medicaid cuts, which actually are finalized after the next election. That's after next November. However, some of the elements in the Medicaid problem will manifest early next year. And in fact, some of them are already happening today with regard to clinics and hospitals and the like. So that's when it can end. Now, if the Republicans simply stonewall it and refuse to negotiate now, it could go on for some while, several days, or until courage is lost on one side or the other. I would hope that courage would be lost on the Republican side. And even Trump is sort of saying, well, we can negotiate some things. Well, yes, we certainly can. With regard to the federal employees and other, well, let's just say federal employees now, whether you are in the military, whether you are a civilian working at the military, or any one of the other dozen or so federal agencies in which the shutdown applies. Now, all federal employees that are in essential services as defined must work if they are essential employees. Unfortunately, you won't get paid. For others that are not working and are at home or wherever they happen to be, they also will not get paid. There are some ways to deal with this. If you belong to a credit union, last shutdown or in previous shutdowns, the credit unions were providing no interest loans for the duration or until the next paycheck or till when that paycheck arrived. There are other organizations out there that will also front the money, most of them with no interest. Be careful, be wise, and be selective. Any questions that you have, let us know. We are in communication with the various credit unions and not a handful, two or three other organizations that could provide credit so that you can bridge this pay gap. We don't like it. It's a problem. But back to the insurance premiums. The notices on the cost of the insurance premiums for the coming year are going out. And if you are in a covered California policy, and this applies to civilians in the military, as well as some military families, those notices went out and indicating that on average, there would be on average a $1,300 increase in premiums. It's about $15,000 a year. Good luck. For some families, it'll be even greater. For other families, depending on income and the number of people that are on that policy, it could be significantly less. That information will be available to all of the Affordable Care Act policies holders, covered California and others, in the very near future. Not exactly sure when it will roll out, probably beginning next week and the week after that. And the sign-up period is the 1st of November and runs for about a month and a half. Maybe longer. It was in the past because of the disruptions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And next we have Nancy Anderson. Nancy, you should begin that prompt, and Nancy Finley is on deck. Nancy, go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Please go ahead. I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Out.
Thank you. I was going to say that I have a lot of friends and relatives that live in red states that are very disturbed about Trump, but they don't feel like they really have any idea of what the Democrats stand for except to be against Trump. So what can people living in strongly Democratic areas do to try to get more Democrats in seats from Republican areas? And what can the party do to develop strong Democratic candidates with strong, clear platforms?
This has been a concern of mine for the last 8 months. And I've told our leadership, Senate as well as House, we have to have an alternative platform. Most recently, with the healthcare crisis that I've described, I urged our team to put forward a very clear, not complex, alternative. And that has actually been done in the Senate. Now, I think they made it a little too complex. And I'm for simple. I've been around a long time. The more complex you make it, the more difficult it's going to be. Be very straightforward, be simple. Are there different ways? For example, and this isn't being advocated now except by me and a few others, since the 1990s with Bill Clinton, I was his principal consultant and actually spoke at his convention about Medicare for all. You can go back and look at the record. I think some of my websites still has some of that ancient history. But there are alternatives that we ought to push forward. And that is, we actually laid the foundation with the Infrastructure Jobs Act, CHIPS Act, and then the Inflation Reduction Act, all of which were designed to build the infrastructure, research, transportation, sanitation, water, chip manufacturing, and other green technologies and the grid system, charging stations and the like, so that we could then have a modern economy and a foundation on which to build it. My advice to any of my colleagues is to use those laws, which Trump is decimating and destroying, use those laws as the foundation for an alternative. There's some familiarity among the public. We know all of that we need to say, and they are foundational for economic growth. I would add to it the healthcare, which we talked about, and I would also add to it the education. Education is fundamental. If we have a well-educated society, problems will be solved. And if we don't, well, there are going to be more problems. I'll take the next question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Nancy Finley, followed by Kathy Carter. Nancy, you are live.
Hi, Representative Garamendi. Thank you for your work. And I was wondering, what specific things are you doing to stop Trump? And are you willing to introduce legislation to stop him either via the 25th Amendment or impeachment? And then a second question is, when will you have an in-person town hall here in the district? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll deal with the last one first. I know people want in person. I will tell you, it's going to be a while. There are multiple threats. You know, I get them all the time, and they're serious. I know that I can have protection, but I cannot provide for the protection of those who attend the in-person. Can't do it. Too many ways to get past the various metal detectors that we would have to employ. And there may be a couple of hundred people that show up. There's probably I don't know, the number's probably approaching 1,000 that at one point or another were on this video. And so just in terms of outreach, this is a far more effective way. And if you think I'm not, if you don't like the way my face looks, I'm sorry, but I try to use expressions as appropriate. So that's where we are on in-person. If the threat subsides, we'll go back and do it. But I've been through the Tea Party. It was very, very dangerous. And we went through the Trump administration. It was also dangerous. And now if you would review the various political shootings that have taken place, left and right, it's a problem. So we're doing video right now, and that's the way it's going to be for some while. Sorry about that. I don't like it, but that's the way it's going to be. Now, with regard to, I don't know, I just lost your if you're still on, reform the first part of your question.
Thank you. So are you willing to introduce legislation to stop Trump either via the 25th Amendment or impeachment?
The answer is yes to both. Al Green from Texas has put forth 2 impeachment resolutions. The first one was very broad and covered many, many pieces of what Trump has done. And it was probably maybe 3 months ago. Al Green put forth another one recently, and it only took up one issue. And I told him, I said, this isn't going to work. You've got to bring in all of the issues, and then we will sort out which are going to be the most important going forward. So the answer is basically yes. With regard to legislation, we've introduced legislation of my own that deal with the cuts, the ongoing decimation of programs that are critical. We are now working on one that I'm going to introduce today, hopefully this week, and that is to make sure that we have 3 people, the president, the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of State having to sign on to the use of nuclear weapons, period. Right now, Trump can do it all by himself. And for those of you that have been watching Trump live, for example, when he talked to every admiral and every general, called him back to Washington and did, I don't know, an hour, maybe a little longer, what was one of the most disturbing presentations I've ever seen from a president. And I'm going, whoa, 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 this guy has problems. And we cannot allow him to have the only finger on the nuclear trigger. So that's just one piece. There are many other pieces that deal with the transportation infrastructure, some of which I've gone over very quickly. On the military side, numerous pieces of legislation dealing with what's going on with the military. And this one piece, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it. And that is Trump is using DEI to purge the military of women, of minorities, and of people that have public policies, even though they're not articulating those in the military, but may have a record when they were in college or wherever before they joined the military, public policies that are different than Trump's. He is purging the military. We've seen this in, well, hell, Stalin did it. Purge the military and put in place people that simply answer to his every beck and wish. That's what Trump is doing. And we've got a very, very dangerous path. Those of you that are curious about this, look at the various History Channel on what Stalin and Hitler did to consolidate their power. And if that isn't enough to get you out on No King's Day, I don't know what will. Okay, next question.
Thank you, sir. Our next question comes from Kathy Carter. And then right after that, we're going to go to Susan McCain. Kathy, you are live.
Am I unmuted?
Nice and loud, Kathy, as though you're
Okay.
talking to a misbehaving child.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for what you do for us.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question. Is there a way to force Mike Johnson to swear in the new Congresswoman-elect, Garibaldi, I believe that's her name?
Grijalva.
Yeah.
The answer is we have to go back to session. We have to do that, I believe, either tomorrow or Thursday. There is a pro forma session, which is basically somebody stands up there in the speaker's chair and say, we're back in session now, and maybe has a quick message, and then bring down the gavel and say, we adjourn, and thus able to maintain control of the House. We attempted last week to use the pro forma moment to deal with the Epstein files. I'm sure that we will try the next pro forma to call us back to session to bring Representative Grijalva and have her sworn in. That then gives us enough signatures on the discharge petition to bring the Epstein file issue to the floor for a vote. Now, will we be able to do that? Well, if somebody would go over there and grab the gavel, perhaps we'd have enough time. But they're pretty quick. Whoever's in the chair is pretty quick and has a real good grip on the gavel. And so maybe not. We're going to try. We'll see. Beyond that, it's up to the speaker to call us back. And he is scared to death that he's not able to control the House. And maybe even his own job, where he says, well, I'm not worried about that. Come on. He's very worried about that. But he can't control his own party. Hard to say where the Freedom Caucus is going to go one day to the next. And he's certainly not about to control the Democrats. So we'll see when it's going to happen. We've got a lot of work to do. We ought to be doing hearings. We certainly have a lot of hearings on the military. Some of you have talked about that, and I have in this conversation. There's all of the other issues of the Trump's. Anyway, we need to be in session. When that's going to occur, we'll see. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Susan McCain, and on deck we have, and I apologize for the pronunciation, Mignon Dunbar. Dunbar is after Susan McCain, who is live.
Bradley, how much more time do we have?
We have about 15 more minutes, sir.
Well, I'm going to shorten my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Garamendi, for having this town hall. I'd also like to commend my fellow participants for addressing many of the same issues and concerns that I have. My question tonight is, what, if anything, can be done about the recent rulings at the U.S. Supreme Court undoing many of the checks and balances that have been integral to our democracy? Issues with the shadow docket, ethic concerns, things like that.
You have just started a synapse in my brain. And I'm about to say something that I hadn't thought about until your question. The Supreme Court, much of what they have done thus far, with the exception of Roe v. Wade, has been what is called the shadow docket, which is used far, far more, I don't know, maybe 10 times more with this particular court than any court before it. And that is basically one of the justices to whom a case is assigned simply decides to do something. Maybe it's to go along with a very, very bad precedent, or to, I don't know, take some action. You go, what? The Supreme Court would actually do that? So the shadow document, many of the issues on the shadow document, which is a very misused by the Supreme Court justices and allowed, and I must say to the detriment of this nation, by the Chief Justice. I want him to find some courage and simply stop that, but he hasn't shown it yet. So here's where you caused me to think. I've talked about the No King's Day coming up. I've talked about, 5, 10 of you go out to the street corner, spend a half hour with your signs. It is time to call Trump to account and the Supreme Court. I suspect some of you are very creative in creating a sign about the Supreme Court. All of the protests that I've seen thus far focus on Trump with good cause. But the Supreme Court is back in session now, and they need to know that a good part of the American public is very, very concerned about the 9 justices, and particularly the 5 who seem to want to create a king. So there's a thought. Think about it. If you think it's useful, why not? I might go down this rabbit hole in a big way. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And just a quick reminder to attendees to make sure that if you'd like to ask a question, to make sure that you have a name associated with your account so we can call on you. We had a few people put in questions, but we don't have names to call on them. Next, we have, as I said, Mignon Dunbar. And then on deck, we have Maria Webster Longan. Mignon, you should be live. Please just hit unmute. And when we're waiting for him to figure that out, I do believe we had one that they asked for me to read aloud. So why don't we go to that first? This is from Tony Mitchell. She said, why the billionaire tax breaks, I believe this is the big ugly bill, sir, are considered permanent. Can't all laws be changed?
Well, all laws can be changed if you have the votes. Increasing taxes on the wealthy will bring upon the members of Congress extraordinary amounts of money, most of them through dark accounts and even election accounts. And I can tell you that there will be in the Senate at least 10 senators, some Democrats, and a whole lot of Republicans that are looking at that dark money and they're going, oh, no, I'm not going to go after those guys. What was negotiated 5 years, whatever, 7 years ago it was in the first 2017 when the initial taxes went into place. It was for, I don't know, whatever, 8, 9 years. And then it was terminated. That was negotiated for good reason, because it required the Congress to go back and to relook at all of the policies and financial implications. The Republicans simply didn't do that. They used reconciliation to avoid the Senate filibuster. That's a 51 vote. That one vote came from the vice president. But they got their reconciliation and able to ram it through, and they made it permanent so that it would take 60 votes, maybe a next reconciliation with the next president, to modify that. I think it is absolutely a horrible, horrible tax policy to give a tax break to the super wealthy. If it had expired, much of the problem of the increasing national deficit would have been resolved, much but not all. Also, corporations. And last year, there were about 50 major American corporations that paid zero taxes. What? Zero. So anyway, we're stuck. And it would take another reconciliation to avoid the next, what would be a Republican filibuster, or we'll see what happens. That's why they did it. It was a good political maneuver from their point of view. However, because it extraordinarily increased the national deficit, they could not take the heat for that. And I don't know, well over $1 trillion increase, $1.5 trillion. They decided they had to make cuts. And the cuts they made were the programs for the working men and families of America, for teachers, for people out on the construction jobs, for seniors, the Medicaid cuts, which are going to come about in 2026, the premium, the health insurance premiums, which we talked about, for the food programs in school, for the ongoing infrastructure, for the all of the green technologies, all of the green energy issues. Cut, 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 cut. Why? To pay for the tax cuts for the corporations and the super wealthy. That is absolutely horrible public policy. And all of us ought to be enraged. So go to the streets peacefully. Call your friends in those red states. And when they say there's nothing to do, tell them, did you contact your senator? Did you contact your representative? And they don't listen. I'm saying they will listen if the numbers add up. They will listen. So carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Mignon actually asked me to read the question, and it will keep you fired up. The question is, Trump has threatened to fire federal government employees if the shutdown continues. Is there a way to prevent this from happening?
He is probably overstepping the law. And the law probably does not allow that in many, many of the potential firings. He's using the word furlough, which I believe he's interpreting as a permanent furlough, otherwise known as a firing. He did this in the first 7 months of his administration. So he has a lot of experience. And Voight, the manager of the Office of Management and Budget, is one very, very devious, intelligent, and dangerous person. And he together with Steve Miller are the two that are basically telling Trump what to do. And so this is a very serious concern. Let's go back to the court. Go back to the court. Go back to the shadow decisions, and go back to, I don't know, maybe a third of the signs that are out there on No King's Day really ought to be about the court. Put some pressure on him. Let him know that the public is listening to him. Okay, you got me down a rabbit hole, so extradite me, Bradley. Give me a different question.
Great. We actually only have 3 minutes left, so we're going to try to power around the last 2 questions. The first one's from Maria. I think you should be getting that prompt. And then the last one from Judy Palmer. Maria, go ahead.
Hi, I want to thank you for having this town hall, I want to add on to the question that was just asked. Well, what can we do as California neighbors to support our people who are working for the government who have been furloughed?
There are several things. First of all, in some cases, food's going to be a problem. They may be able to get a temporary loan, but even if they had that, their pay scale, they're dependent upon the food, California Fresh food stamps, whatever we're called, whatever you know that name by. Those programs were significantly cut by Trump before this problem. And so there are various church organizations and other kinds of programs that are out there. Join in, help your neighbor as best you can. I was down at the grocery store yesterday, I guess it was Sunday, and the grocery store has food bags, and they put together maybe $20 of food, and I pick one up and go through checkup just routinely. There are various ways you can help personally, churches and the like. Good question. Let your empathy, let your heart guide you.
Thank you, sir. And our final question from Judy Palmer. Judy, you are live. Just go hit that unmute button.
I sure did. Hi, Congressman. Here's my question. My husband and I are self-employed. He's a professional massage therapist, and I'm a spiritual counselor, or I'm actually a professional psychic medium. And so basically, here's my question. We are starting to lose clients. And what they're doing is they're calling up and they're saying, I can't afford it because, food and stuff comes first. What can we do? What can we say to them to keep our business going?
Well, we're back to health insurance here. If you are involved in Covered California or any of the Affordable Care Act subsidy programs, work diligently in your various, and we've talked about demonstrations and the like, letter writing, all that. Do that now. If we have an opportunity here to keep those kind of programs going, you may or may not be involved in those programs. It's going to be difficult. One of the outcomes of the Medicaid cuts is that many of the clinics that were set up in the Affordable Care Act will disappear. They simply will not be viable if those Medicare cuts come about. And some of them, in one way or another, are dependent upon these insurance premium revenues to continue to operate. So it's here and now. I really urge you to get engaged. And also, it's going to be difficult. And this is why I and many of my colleagues are just outraged about this. I said, I've been at this, honest to God, I've been at this healthcare issue. I was chairman in the state Senate in the 1970s and 80s of the Health and Welfare Committee. And I was dealing with this problem then, and it's still in place. The American healthcare system really needs a basic overhaul in the way in which it is financed. Now, we can do a whole hour or 20 hours on that piece of it, but it's here and now. And I really urge you to engage in every way possible. Get in touch with my staff, and maybe we'll have a specific remedy for your specific problem. Thank you very much. Bradley, is it wrap time?
It is, sir. And I was going to say, just a quick reminder to folks, Cameron put in the chat all the ways that you can follow Congressman Garamendi on social media, as well as subscribing to his weekly e-newsletter, which will go right to your email box. It also has links to all the services the Congressman provides, including help with a federal agency, nominations for service academies, internships, and tours in Washington, D.C. So go to the chat for all of those links. And sir, I will go to you to close it out.
I'm just thinking about the last question and the desperation of that individual couple has, and maybe even worse in the days ahead. I don't know, there's 800,000 in my district, even greater numbers. And there's a world of hurt. There's a world of hurt. It existed before Trump. We were working diligently to try to solve those problems. Trump comes in, sends us in exactly the wrong direction. in that world of hurt, wherever it's in every part of our society and economy, that hammer's coming down. So here's what I would ask you to do is to get involved. I'm not going to go back to all of the ways in which I've suggested, but please, please do. And secondly, if you are in a world of hurt, reach out. Reach out to various support organizations, certainly the churches, the food banks, and others. And here's my final one. Reach out to us. We may have a solution, and we may have knowledge of where you can seek immediate help, either as a result of the shutdown and the furloughs and the layoffs, or because you've already been laid off, or your private sector program has been destroyed by Trump. So we're here. We'll do the best we can to assist you. We may have a solution. We may not. But I will tell you, we are really good listeners. Thank you so very much for joining us tonight. Thank you for your questions, an extraordinary array of questions. And we'll look forward to this again. We try to do these every couple of weeks, and we'll continue with that. Thank you. And I'm going to say good night and sign off. Thank you.